The chocolate cake sat untouched in front of my son when Vanessa made her comment. We were at Mom's house for Sunday dinner, the way we've been doing for years. The dining room felt smaller than usual, the air thick with something I couldn't name yet. My 12-year-old boy, Mason, had just finished telling everyone about making the honor roll despite switching schools mid-semester after the divorce. Vanessa's fork clinked against her plate. She wore that expression I'd seen 1,000 times growing up, the one that said she was about to deliver a truth nobody asked for. Her husband Gerald sat beside her, already looking uncomfortable. Their kids, Brooke and Tyler, were upstairs watching television. Maybe if your son had 2 parents, he wouldn't be such a mess, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. The word hung in the air like smoke. Mason's hand froze halfway to his water glass. He set it down carefully, then pushed his dessert plate toward the center of the table. The scrape of porcelain against wood made everyone flinch. I watched my son's face close off, the way a store pulls down its shutters at night. He'd worked so hard this year. Adjusted to a new school, made new friends, kept his grades up while his father decided our family wasn't worth fighting for. And my sister had just reduced all of it to nothing. My purse sat on the chair beside me. Inside was a manila folder I'd been carrying for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Or maybe waiting for the courage. The investigator's report had cost me $1,500, but every page was worth it. Maybe if I started, reaching for my bag. Vanessa's face drained of color. She knew. Somehow, she already knew what was coming. Let it go, Dad said from the head of the table. His voice carried that warning tone he'd used when we were kids fighting over toys. This is family dinner? Mom touched my arm, her fingers cold. Sweetheart, please. But I'd held it too long. Years of Vanessa's comments about my choices, my parenting, my failed marriage. The way she'd positioned herself as the golden child with the perfect life while I stumbled through mine. The folder came out of my purse, and I set it on the table between the mashed potatoes and green beans. Mason, honey, why don't you go upstairs with your cousins? I said quietly. My son looked at me, then at his aunt, then back at me. Something passed between us, an understanding that mothers and sons develop when they've survived hard times together. He stood without a word and left the dining room. His footsteps on the stairs were the only sound. Vanessa's hand trembled as she set down her fork. What is that? This? I opened the folder, pulling out the first photograph. This is you and Bradley Mercer having lunch at the Garden Bistro on April 3rd. And here's April 10th, same place. April 17th, you're branching out to the Riverside Inn. I laid the photos across the table like playing cards. Gerald leaned forward, his face going pale. Mom made a small sound in her throat. There are 47 photos total, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Spanning 6 months. The investigator was very thorough. Vanessa stood so fast her chair tipped backward. You had me followed? I had suspicions confirmed, I corrected. There's a difference. Gerald picked up one of the photos, his hands shaking. In it, Vanessa and Bradley were walking to his car, his hand on the small of her back. The intimacy of the gesture was unmistakable. Dad cleared his throat. This isn't appropriate dinner conversation. Neither is calling my son a mess, I said, looking at him directly. But here we are. Mom was crying silently, tears running down her cheeks into her napkin. I felt a pang of guilt, but it dissolved quickly. How many times had I sat at this table while Vanessa criticized my life? How many Sunday dinners had I endured her pointed comments about single motherhood, about my smaller house, about my son's struggles? Bradley Mercer, Gerald said quietly, still staring at the photo. From your yoga class. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. It's not what it looks like. There are also credit card statements, I said, pulling out another set of papers. Hotel charges. The Grandview Suites, specifically. Every other Thursday for 5 months. Gerald's chair scraped back. He walked out of the dining room without a word. We heard the front door open and close, then his car starting in the driveway. How could you do this? Vanessa's voice rose, shrill and desperate. At Mom and Dad's house? In front of everyone? How could I? The laugh that came out of me was sharp. You just called my son a mess because his father abandoned us. You've spent 3 years acting like you're superior because you have a husband and I don't. And all this time, you've been sneaking around with your yoga instructor. He's not just a yoga instructor, she snapped, then seemed to realize what she'd admitted. Mom stood, her chair scraping loud in the silence. She picked up her plate and walked toward the kitchen. Dad followed her, leaving Vanessa and me alone in the dining room. My sister's perfect composure cracked. She sat back down, her head in her hands. When did you know? 3 months ago. I saw your car at the riverside and when I was meeting a client nearby. You told Mom you were at a PTA meeting that night. She looked up, mascara smudging under her eyes. So you hired an investigator? I hired someone to document what I already knew. There's a difference. I gathered the photos back into the folder. I wasn't sure I'd ever use these. Part of me hoped I wouldn't have to. But I insulted Mason, so you decided to blow up my life? You've been insulting us for years, I said. Today you just went too far. Vanessa's laugh was bitter. You think you're so righteous. Single mother struggling through, everyone should feel sorry for poor you. I never asked for pity. I asked for basic respect. Gerald's going to leave me. Her voice cracked on his name. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. That's between you two. She wiped her eyes, smearing makeup across her cheeks. What do you want? To ruin my marriage? To make yourself feel better about yours falling apart? I want you to understand what it feels like. I stood, pushing my chair in carefully. When someone tears down what matters most to you in front of the people you love. When they take your struggles and use them as ammunition. When they kick you while you're already down. I never meant, yes, you did. I cut her off. Every single comment was meant exactly how it sounded. Upstairs, I could hear the television and kids laughing. Mason's voice rose above the others, explaining something about a video game. He sounded happy, normal. The way a 12-year-old should sound. Vanessa pulled her phone from her purse, probably to call Gerald. Her hands were still shaking. Are you going to tell everyone? Post it online? Send copies to Gerald's family? No, I said. These stay between us. Unless you keep coming after my son. She looked up sharply. What? Mason didn't ask to be born into a broken home. He didn't choose for his father to leave. And he certainly doesn't deserve to be used as a weapon in whatever weird competition you've created in your head. I picked up my purse and the folder. You leave him alone, I keep these private. Simple. That's blackmail. That's consequences. I moved toward the stairs to collect Mason. Something you've avoided your whole life because Mom and Dad always protected their precious golden child. In the kitchen, I could hear my parents talking in low voices. They'd probably want to have a family meeting later, try to smooth everything over the way they always did. But I was done smoothing. Mason was sprawled on the floor in the playroom, controller in hand. He paused the game when I appeared in the doorway. We leaving? He asked. Yeah, buddy. Time to go. He said goodbye to Brooke and Tyler, giving them each a quick hug. On the drive home, he was quiet for several miles before finally speaking. Aunt Vanessa's mean sometimes, he said, looking out the window. Yeah, she is. What was in the folder? I glanced at him, this kid who'd grown up too fast over the past 3 years. Proof that perfect families don't exist. He nodded slowly, processing. Good. At home, Mason went straight to his room to finish homework. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, my phone already buzzing with messages. Mom, asking me to call her. Dad, saying we needed to talk. Even Gerald, surprisingly, asking if we could meet for coffee. The only person not texting was Vanessa. 3 days passed before I heard from my sister. She showed up at my house after work, standing on the porch like she wasn't sure she was welcome. Maybe she wasn't. Gerald moved out, she said when I opened the door. He's staying at his brother's place. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't close the door either. I'm sorry. Are you? The question held no venom, just exhaustion. I'm sorry your marriage is struggling, I clarified. I'm not sorry you're facing consequences. She leaned against the porch railing. I ended things with Bradley. Told him I made a mistake, that I need to focus on my family. That's between you and Gerald. He wants a divorce. Her voice broke on the word. Says he can't trust me anymore. Mason appeared behind me, backpack slung over one shoulder. He had study group at his friend's house. He looked at Vanessa, then at me, waiting. Go ahead, honey, I told him. Text me when you need pickup. He left through the side door to his bike, giving us space. Vanessa watched him go. He's a good kid, she said quietly. I shouldn't have said what I said. No, you shouldn't have. She turned back to me, and for the first time in our lives, my sister looked small. Defeated. I was jealous, you know. Of you. That surprised me. Of what, exactly? My divorce? My struggle to make ends meet? Of how strong you are. She wiped at her eyes. When your marriage fell apart, you just handled it. Found a new place, enrolled Mason in a good school, kept working, kept going. You didn't fall apart. I fell apart plenty, I said. Just not where people could see. Mom and Dad were so proud of how you managed everything. They kept saying how brave you were, how resilient. Vanessa's laugh was hollow. And all I could think was that I'm the one with the perfect marriage, the perfect kids, the perfect life. Why aren't they proud of me? So you tore me down to build yourself up. She nodded miserably. And the whole time, I was lying to everyone. Including myself. We stood in silence for a moment. A neighbor walked by with a dog, waving. I waved back automatically. What do you want from me, Vanessa? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe just to understand why you waited so long. Why you didn't expose me right away. Because I'm not cruel, I said. And because some part of me hoped you'd figure out your life without me having to destroy it. But I pushed too far. You attacked my son. My voice hardened. That's where my mercy ends. She flinched but didn't argue. Can I ask you something? I waited. If I'd apologized that night, would you have put the folder away? Kept the secret? The question hung between us. I thought about it honestly before answering. I don't know, I finally said. Maybe. Or maybe it would have just delayed the inevitable. Vanessa nodded slowly. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I am sorry. About Mason, about everything. I know it doesn't fix anything. No, I agreed. It doesn't. I watched her walk to her car, shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. The perfect posture, the confident stride, all of it was gone. She looked human now. Fallible. Mom called that evening, her voice tight with stress. Your sister's marriage is falling apart. I know. This family is being torn apart. She sounded close to tears again. Can't we all just forgive and move forward? That's up to Gerald and Vanessa, I said. Not me. But you started this whole mess by bringing those photos. Mom, I interrupted gently but firmly. Vanessa started this mess 6 months ago when she decided her marriage vows didn't matter. I just decided her behavior toward my son didn't get to continue without consequences. She was quiet for a long moment. Mason's doing okay? He's fine. Better than fine, actually. I just want everyone to be happy, she said, and I could hear the weariness in her voice. The burden of trying to hold a fracturing family together. Sometimes people need to be unhappy for a while before they can fix what's broken, I told her. You can't smooth this over with a Sunday dinner and forced apologies. After we hung up, I found Mason in his room, supposedly doing math homework but actually reading something on his phone. He looked up guiltily. Finish your work first, I said. I am. Just taking a break. He set the phone down. Was that Grandma? Yeah. Is she mad at you? I sat on the edge of his bed. She's upset about the situation. But that's not your concern. The next few weeks brought unexpected complications. Vanessa started calling Mom multiple times a day, alternating between tearful apologies and angry accusations. Dad retreated into silence, the way he always did when emotions ran high. And Gerald's lawyer contacted me, asking if I'd be willing to provide testimony in the divorce proceedings. I met with my own attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Winters who'd handled my divorce 3 years earlier. She reviewed the investigator's report in her downtown office while I sat across from her, fingers drumming nervously on the armrest. This is solid evidence, Patricia said, flipping through the pages. But testifying in your sister's divorce could get complicated. Are you prepared for that? I don't know what I'm prepared for anymore, I admitted. She leaned back in her chair, studying me over her reading glasses. Gerald's attorney will ask you detailed questions about how you obtained this information, why you waited to disclose it, what your relationship with Vanessa has been like. Her attorney will try to paint you as vindictive, claim you fabricated evidence out of spite. I didn't fabricate anything. I know that. But family court gets messy, especially when siblings are involved. They'll dig into your history, your motives, everything. Patricia closed the folder. My advice? Only testify if you're absolutely certain it's worth the scrutiny. I thought about Brooke and Tyler, Vanessa's kids who didn't ask for any of this. About Mason, who'd already been through enough turmoil. About the family gatherings that would never be the same regardless of what I chose. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course. But Gerald's lawyer needs an answer by next week. Walking to my car, I called my best friend Lauren. We'd known each other since college and she'd been my rock through the divorce, the single parenting struggles, everything. You're going to think I'm crazy, I said when she answered. I already think you're crazy. What's the latest? I filled her in on the lawyer's request. Lauren listened without interrupting, the way she always did when I needed to process something out loud. So the question is whether you want to get dragged through a divorce trial that isn't even yours, she summarized when I finished. Essentially, yes. What does your gut tell you? I stopped walking, standing in the parking garage as cars drove past. My gut tells me I've already done enough damage. That testifying would just be piling on. But Gerald deserves to have the truth validated in court. Vanessa's probably going to lie, claim it was a misunderstanding or that the photos are doctored. Without my testimony, it's just her word against his. Lauren sighed. There's no good answer here, is there? No. There really isn't. That evening, Mason had a school project due. We sat at the dining room table together, him working on a presentation about the water cycle while I pretended to review work emails but actually spiraled about the lawyer's question. Mom, you're not actually reading those, Mason said without looking up from his poster board. What makes you say that? You've been on the same email for 10 minutes, and you keep sighing. Smart kid. I closed my laptop. You're right. Sorry, just distracted. He set down his markers. Is it about Aunt Vanessa? Sort of. Her divorce is getting complicated. Are they going to make you talk in court? The question surprised me. How do you know about that? Tyler texted me. Said his dad's lawyer might call you as a witness. Mason's expression was serious. Are you going to do it? I haven't decided yet. He considered this, then went back to drawing a diagram of evaporation. We worked in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. If you testify, Aunt Vanessa will probably hate you forever. Probably. But if you don't, Uncle Gerald might think you're taking her side. That's the problem, yeah. Mason carefully colored in a cloud, his tongue poking out in concentration the way it had since he was little. What would you want me to do? If I was the grown-up? The role reversal made me smile despite everything. What do you think I should do? Tell the truth, he said simply. Even if it's hard. You always tell me that honesty matters more than being comfortable. Out of the mouths of 12-year-olds. I'd given him that advice countless times, usually about homework he didn't want to admit he hadn't finished or mistakes he was afraid to own up to. Now here it was, handed back to me when the stakes were infinitely higher. You're right, I said quietly. You're absolutely right. He grinned. Can you write that down? I want proof for the next time we argue about something. The laugh felt good, breaking the tension that had been building for days. We finished his project together, and I made the decision to call Gerald's lawyer in the morning. But that night, Dad called. His voice was strained in a way I'd rarely heard. Your mother is in the hospital, he said without preamble. My heart stopped. What happened? She collapsed at home. They think it's stress-related, maybe a panic attack or heart palpitations. They're running tests now. He sounded old suddenly, frightened. Can you come? I arranged for Lauren to stay with Mason and drove to the hospital, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Mom was only 63, healthy and active. This couldn't be happening. Dad met me in the waiting room, his face pale and drawn. We'd never been particularly close, he was a quiet man who expressed love through providing rather than words, but seeing him look so lost made something crack in my chest. They're keeping her overnight for observation, he said. Her heart rate was irregular, blood pressure through the roof. Can I see her? He nodded, leading me through the maze of hospital corridors. Mom was in a private room, hooked up to monitors that beeped rhythmically. She looked small in the hospital bed, vulnerable. Mom, I said softly, taking her hand. Her eyes opened, focusing slowly on my face. You came. Of course I came. She squeezed my hand weakly. I'm sorry. I know this is the last thing you need right now, more family drama. Don't apologize for being sick. I'm not sick, she said. I'm stressed. About you and Vanessa, about Gerald and the kids, about everything falling apart. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I keep thinking if I'd been a better mother, set better boundaries, none of this would have happened. Dad cleared his throat. Helen, the doctor said you need to rest. I'm tired of resting. She looked at me directly. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. I'm tired of asking people to keep the peace when there's no peace to keep. A nurse came in to check her vitals, giving us a moment to collect ourselves. When she left, Mom continued. Gerald's lawyer called me today. Asked if I'd testify about Vanessa's character, about the state of her marriage. She laughed bitterly. I told him I couldn't, that I don't even know who my daughter is anymore. What did he say? He understood. Said family cases are always the hardest. She adjusted her position, wincing. Then Vanessa called, crying, begging me to talk to you. To convince you not to testify against her. I haven't agreed to testify yet. But you're considering it? I nodded. Gerald deserves the truth to come out. And Vanessa deserves to lose everything? Mom's voice rose, triggering an alarm on one of the monitors. A nurse appeared immediately, checking the machines and giving us a warning look. You need to stay calm, Mrs. Henderson, the nurse said firmly. Your blood pressure is spiking again. We waited until she left before continuing in quieter tones. I'm not trying to destroy Vanessa, I said carefully. But I'm also not going to lie to protect her from consequences she created. Mom closed her eyes. I know you're right. It just hurts to watch both my daughters suffer. Only one of us chose this suffering, I pointed out. Dad spoke up from his chair in the corner. Your mother's been taking calls from Vanessa at all hours. 3-4 times a night sometimes. It's wearing her down. Why didn't you tell me? Because you have enough on your plate, Mom said. Because I thought I could handle it, thought I could talk Vanessa through this crisis the way I've talked her through everything else in her life. The pattern was so clear now. Mom rushing to Vanessa's rescue while I handled my problems alone. Not out of favoritism, but because Vanessa had never learned to cope with adversity while I'd been forced to develop resilience. You need to set boundaries with her, I said gently. For your own health. I'm her mother. And you're a person who just collapsed from stress. Mom, you can't fix this for her. She has to figure it out herself. We stayed at the hospital until visiting hours ended. Dad walked me to my car, his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. Thank you for coming, he said. Your mother needed to see you. Of course. He hesitated, then spoke again. I know I haven't always been good at the emotional stuff. Let you and your sister work things out on your own when maybe I should have stepped in. Dad, let me finish. He looked at me, and in the parking lot lights I could see how tired he was. What Vanessa said about Mason, about him being a mess because he doesn't have 2 parents. That was cruel. And I should have said something right then, should have defended my grandson instead of asking you to let it go. The apology I'd never expected to hear. You were trying to keep the peace. I was taking the easy way out, he corrected, echoing what Mom had said at lunch. Your mother and we've enabled Vanessa's bad behavior for too long. And now we're all paying the price. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Dad wasn't a hugger, never had been, but he reached out and squeezed my shoulder. You're doing right by your son, he said. That's what matters. Driving home, I thought about my parents carrying guilt for Vanessa's choices. About Mom in the hospital bed, stressed to the point of physical symptoms. About the ripple effects of one Sunday dinner confrontation spreading through the entire family structure. Mason was asleep on the couch when I got home, Lauren reading beside him. She looked up when I came in. How's your mom? Stable. Stressed. I sank into the armchair. This whole situation is literally making her sick. Lauren marked her place in her book. You know that's not your fault, right? Isn't it? If I just kept quiet about the photos, Vanessa would still be cheating, Gerald would still be living a lie, and you'd still be taking abuse at family dinners, Lauren interrupted. Your mom's stress comes from the situation, not from you exposing it. Try telling my guilt that. She smiled sympathetically. Have you decided about testifying? I looked at Mason, sprawled in innocent sleep. He told me to choose honesty even when it was hard. Out of the mouths of children. Yeah, I said. I have. He picked at a loose thread on his comforter. Trevor at school said his parents are getting divorced. He said his mom found out his dad was cheating. My heart clenched. That's hard for Trevor. Yeah. Mason looked at me directly. Is that what happened with you and Dad? We'd never talked about the specifics. He'd been 9 when his father left, old enough to know something was wrong but too young for details. Now he was 12, asking real questions that deserved real answers. Your dad made choices that broke our marriage, I said carefully. It wasn't about you, it was never about you. Adults sometimes mess up relationships all on their own. Was Aunt Vanessa messing up her relationship? Smart kid. Yeah, she was. And that's what was in the folder. Yes. He absorbed this information, processing it the way he processed everything else, carefully, thoroughly. Did you show Uncle Gerald? No. But he saw the evidence anyway. Mason nodded. Good. He should know. The simplicity of his moral code struck me. Right and wrong were still clear-cut at 12, before the world taught you about gray areas and complicated motivations. Aunt Vanessa was mean to you, he said. Really mean. I'm glad you stood up for us. I'll always stand up for you, I promised. Always. He smiled, then returned to his homework. I left him alone, marveling at his resilience. He'd weathered a divorce, a move, a new school, and now family drama, and he was still fundamentally okay. Still kind, still working hard, still believing in fairness. Sunday dinner was canceled the following week. Mom sent a group text saying she wasn't feeling up to hosting. Nobody argued. The family gathering tradition that had held for 15 years was suspended indefinitely. Gerald called me on a Tuesday afternoon. We met at a coffee shop downtown, both of us arriving early and awkward. Thank you for meeting me, he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. Of course. He looked tired, older than his 41 years. I wanted to ask you about the investigation. How long were you watching her? The investigator followed her for 6 weeks. But I suspected for 3 months before that. And you never said anything to me. It wasn't my place, I said. Not until she crossed a line. He laughed bitterly. The line being insulting your son. Yes. I can't decide if I'm grateful or angry that you kept this from me for so long. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. 3 more months of living a lie because you were being... What? Merciful? I wasn't trying to protect Vanessa, I clarified. I was trying to protect Brooke and Tyler. And honestly, I was hoping she'd end it on her own and I'd never need to say anything. But she didn't end it. No. She got meaner instead. Gerald stared into his coffee. I keep replaying our marriage in my head, looking for signs I missed. They were all there, I just didn't want to see them. I stayed quiet, letting him process. The Thursday nights were book club, he continued. The new clothes were because she wanted to feel good about herself. The phone she kept face down was because she valued her privacy. He shook his head. I believed every excuse. That's not your fault. Isn't it? I trusted her completely. Maybe that was naive. Trust isn't naive, I said. It's what marriage is supposed to be built on. She's the one who broke that, not you. We sat in silence for a while, watching people come and go through the coffee shop. Finally, Gerald spoke again. Are there more copies of those photos? Just the one set. The investigator sent everything digitally, but I deleted the files and kept only the prints. Why? I considered the question. Because I'm not trying to destroy Vanessa's life. I just needed her to stop destroying mine. He nodded slowly. I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer says it'll be messy with the kids and assets, but I can't stay in a marriage with no trust. That's understandable. Brooke asked me yesterday why I moved out. His voice cracked slightly. She's 14. Old enough to know something's really wrong but young enough to think she can fix it. My heart ached for those kids, caught in the aftermath of their mother's choices. What did you tell her? That sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they love. That her mom and I need time to figure things out. He rubbed his face. She asked if it was her fault. Oh, Gerald. I told her no, absolutely not. That this is between her mother and me, nothing to do with her or Tyler. But I don't think she believed me. I thought of Mason asking similar questions 3 years ago, the same fear in his eyes that he'd somehow caused his father to leave. It takes time for them to really understand that. How's Mason doing? With all of this? He's okay. Tougher than I give him credit for sometimes. Gerald smiled faintly. He's a good kid. What Vanessa said about him was completely out of line. Thank you for saying that. We finished our coffee and parted ways in the parking lot. Watching Gerald drive away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that he knew the truth. Guilt that I'd been the one to reveal it. And underneath it all, a fierce protectiveness toward my son that had driven every decision I'd made. Mom invited me to lunch 2 weeks later, just the two of us. We met at a quiet restaurant she liked, sitting in a corner booth away from other diners. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," she started after we ordered. "About what Vanessa said to Mason, about the photos, about all of it." I waited, uncertain where this was heading. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "For asking you to let it go. For prioritizing peace over standing up for your son." The apology caught me off guard. "Mom, no, let me finish." She took a breath. "I've spent your whole lives trying to keep things smooth between you and your sister. When she was critical of you, I told you to ignore it. When she made snide comments, I said she didn't mean it. I let her treat you badly because it was easier than confronting her. You were trying to keep the family together. I was taking the easy way out," she corrected. "And in doing so, I taught Vanessa that her behavior had no consequences. I taught you that your feelings mattered less than family harmony." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I never blamed you for that." "Maybe you should have." She reached across the table, taking my hand. "You're a better mother to Mason than I was to you girls. You protected him when it mattered, even though it meant causing pain. It wasn't easy, I admit it. The right thing rarely is." She squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that more over the years, should have recognized how hard you've worked, how much you've overcome. Instead, I let Vanessa's jealousy poison our family dinners." "She told you she was jealous?" Mom nodded. "She came to see me last week. Broke down crying, admitted everything. Said she spent years resenting you for being strong while she was falling apart behind her perfect facade." Our food arrived, giving us a moment to collect ourselves. When the server left, Mom continued. "She asked me if I loved you more than her. Can you imagine? A 40-year-old woman asking if her mother plays favorites. What did you tell her?" "That I love both my daughters, but I'm disappointed in the person she became. That love doesn't mean excusing bad behavior." Mom picked at her salad. "She didn't take that well. I can imagine. She wants to know if there's a path to reconciliation. Between her and Gerald, between her and you, between all of us." Mom looked at me directly. I told her that's not up to me. The question hung between us. Was there a path forward? "I don't know," I said honestly. "Right now, I need distance. Mason needs protection from her criticism. Maybe someday that changes, but not yet." "That's fair." We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. "Do you think I was wrong to expose her?" Mom considered this carefully. "I think you were pushed to a breaking point. I think you chose to protect your child over protecting your sister's secrets. As a mother, I understand that choice completely. But I wish it hadn't come to that. I wish Vanessa had been kinder. I wish you felt you could come to me sooner. I wish our family didn't communicate through explosions and ultimatums," she sighed. "But wishes don't change reality." After lunch, Mom hugged me tight in the parking lot. "Sunday dinners are on hold for a while," she said. "But maybe we can start a new tradition. Just you, me, and Mason. Something smaller, less fraught." "I'd like that." Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The validation from my mother meant more than I'd realized. For years, I'd carried the weight of feeling like the difficult daughter, the one who couldn't hold her marriage together, the one causing problems. Hearing Mom acknowledge Vanessa's role in our family dysfunction released something I didn't know I was holding on to. Mason was at a friend's house when I got home. The quiet house gave me time to think, to process everything that had happened since that Sunday dinner. Had I done the right thing? The question circled endlessly. My phone buzzed with a text from Gerald, "Signed the papers today. It's really over." I texted back, "I'm sorry you're going through this." His response came quickly, "I'm not. Better to know the truth than live a lie." The truth. That's what it all came down to. Vanessa had built her life on a foundation of lies, and I'd chosen to expose them. Not out of malice, not for revenge, but because she'd attacked the person I loved most in the world. When Mason came home later, windblown and happy from an afternoon of basketball with friends, he found me on the couch with tea and a book. "Good day?" I asked. "Yeah. We won 3 games in a row." He flopped down beside me. "Trevor asked if we're going to Grandma's for Sunday dinner soon." "Not for a while. But Grandma wants to start having dinner with just the 3 of us instead." He brightened. "Cool. Can we do tacos?" "I'm sure we can arrange that." He grabbed his backpack, heading toward his room, then paused. "Mom? Thanks for what you did at dinner that night. You don't need to thank me for protecting you." "Yeah, I do. His expression was serious beyond his years. Dad left, and that hurt. But you stayed. You fight for us. That matters. He disappeared down the hallway before I could respond, leaving me blinking back tears on the couch. That matters. 2 words that made everything worthwhile. A month passed. Vanessa and I maintained careful distance, communicating only through brief texts about logistics when necessary. Gerald moved forward with the divorce. Mom established Tuesday dinners with just Mason and me, and they became the bright spot of our weeks. Then, on a random Thursday evening, Vanessa called. I almost didn't answer. I know I don't deserve your time, she said when I picked up. But I wanted you to hear this from me. I started therapy. Okay. And I'm trying to figure out why I became someone I don't recognize. Someone who cheats on her husband and tears down her sister. Her voice wavered. The therapist asked me what I was getting out of putting you down. I didn't have an answer. And now? Now I think I was trying to convince myself that my life was better than yours. Because if it wasn't, if you were actually doing fine despite the divorce, then what did that say about me? About my marriage that looked perfect but felt empty? I sat down, processing her words. That must have been hard to realize. It was. It is. She paused. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I destroyed your trust, hurt your son, wrecked my marriage. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to understand how I got here. I appreciate you telling me. Brooke's in therapy too. She's struggling with the divorce, blaming herself. Vanessa's voice broke. I did that to her. My choices hurt my daughter. She'll be okay, I said, meaning it. Kids are resilient. Like Mason? Yeah. Like Mason. We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. It wasn't reconciliation, wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. A small step toward understanding, maybe. That night, tucking Mason into bed despite his protests that he was too old for tucking in, I thought about families and forgiveness and the complicated mess of loving people who hurt you. Can I ask you something? Mason said, settling under his covers. Always. Do you think Aunt Vanessa will ever be nice again? Like she was when I was little? I remembered Vanessa from years ago, before the jealousy and competition, when she'd been the sister who taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies. That person was still in there somewhere, buried under years of poor choices and insecurity. I think people can change if they really want to, I said carefully. But it takes time and effort. Do you want her to change? Yeah, I admitted. I do. Because underneath everything, she's still my sister. He nodded, satisfied with this answer. I'm glad you're my mom. I'm glad you're my son. After he fell asleep, I stood in his doorway for a moment, watching him breathe steadily. This boy who'd been called a mess by someone who should have loved him unconditionally. This resilient, kind, smart kid who deserved better than the hand he'd been dealt. I'd protected him the only way I knew how, with the only weapon I had. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. The folder still sat in my desk drawer, the photographs of Vanessa's betrayal tucked away but not destroyed. Insurance, maybe. Or a reminder that truth has power, even when keeping it secret seems easier. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Lights glowed in windows up and down the street, each one hiding its own complicated family dynamics, its own secrets and struggles. We were all just doing our best, making mistakes, trying to protect the people we loved. And sometimes, that meant bringing darkness into the light, no matter how much it hurt.